Because we kept you waiting for a while, and that's for a good reason. Because if you look around, you might have noticed that there's cameras over here, and that in the back of the lecture hall, there's a whole bunch of students working behind a desk, a technical desk, because we've got some technical support here today, and we've got a live broadcast. So for that reason, I'd like to ask you, once again, to switch off your telephones. So make sure that that is switched off, silent, because we don't want to mess up the broadcasting, right? Now, thanks all for being here. Glad to see so many of you, enthusiastic faces. I'm welcoming you on the Global Mind event. Something new, something different. We have never done this before. And today we'd like to tell you something more about global minds. And it's not for the first time that we talk about global minds, because you've done this before, right? There have been many activities so far, and those activities are set up because what we think at BUAS is important is that you discover your world. And if we talk about discovering a world, you can think of, well, traveling, right? Going on holidays, somewhere exotic, maybe even traveling in the Netherlands or in Europe. But there's more to it. There's more to discovery. It's about your world, and your world can change. And you can broaden your view. And we talked about this in numerous sessions before. For example, the first thing I think was brought up in one of the lectures is about culture shock. That some of you might have encountered this. That culture shock is something that you can experience when you enter a new country, but you can also experience it when you start in a new school. Because things are different. You don't know how things work. And that goes together with the idea of what is normal. And I'm pretty sure you all had to get used here to what is normal at BUAS. What is normally for a facility or hotel management student. Moreover, we talked about groups, and that it's so great to be part of a group. But that goes together with actually excluding others, because they are in other groups. And that is something very normal. That's something that happens to all humans, but it's very important to be aware of that. Because being part of a group is great, but being excluded feels horrible. And we all wish to create such a world at BUAS where everyone is included. We talked about leaving your comfort zone, doing something you might not be used to, maybe even starting with a new language, speaking English, because that is how you can communicate here. We talked about your frame of reference. So what is your frame of reference? Where does it come from? About culture, and that culture is related to a frame of reference, but that it's not always visible. That you can actually explore culture with the onion model. Last but not least, that it all starts with awareness, becoming aware of where you stand, who you are, and that you can change your attitude, that you can gain knowledge, and that you can actually master more skills to actually create this global mindset. And for today, we're actually helping you to get more into that global mindset, because this is an introduction into the Global Mind Monitor, and that's a tool that we're going to use for exploring your own global mind. More on that later on, because, well, when thinking of this all, we thought, well, what can we do? We can give you more theory, we can tell you even more about culture, how does it work, blah, blah, blah. But hey, there's people who can tell you such great things, and therefore we have invited some alumni and some professionals from the industry that will tell you more about their experiences with culture. So on the program of today, first of all, we've got Nicolas Rij, an alumnus of this academy, who will tell you more about his daily work in the industry, dealing with different cultures. Then we've got Adip, here in the front, who will explain you more about him being a global citizen, right? Then we've got a panel discussion based upon your own questions, a quiz, and some drinks afterwards. You see the camera team, and this event is truly a co-creation. It's not only by, for example, myself being a lecturer. No, we have a team of students, and they're all over the place now. Those are the exchange students. They've organized this event. Moreover, we've got Charlie Hicks. He's the MC of today, so I'll handing him the mic later on. He's the master of ceremony, and he's responsible for the hub, or campus entertainment network. And Heini Veerle, being a tutor of the students. We've got Jacques Maas, somewhere over here. And before Charlie enters the stage, I'd like to address who is here to broadcast, because I think they, after my announcement, certainly need an applause. That's Annebelle, Veerle, Nichita, Wouter, Jesse, Emma and Gijs, who are broadcasting and arranging it over the house. Thank you. Now, Charlie, take it away.
Okay. I think I might have to turn this on, yeah? Yeah.
The red button.
Got it. I know how to do that. I think I should maybe know how to do that. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here, so thanks for getting me involved in this. I was told to stand in the square, though. Thanks for getting me involved in this. I'm happy to be here. I tried to embrace the cultural mindset by representing my own culture. You guys won't be able to see it, but I'm wearing what's called a bolo tie. I'm from Arizona in the United States. So this is a traditional cowboy kind of Native American tie. It's much better than the neckties you may see in other cultures, because this kind of just loosely fits around my neck. I've got cowboy boots on as well from my home state of Arizona, but I decided to leave my gun at home. So I didn't bring that along with me for this environment. I left that part of my culture back in Arizona. So no worries there. I want to thank the Hub and our AV students for broadcasting. It's hub.buas.nl, and there's an app available in the App Store for you guys to all download later and follow the Campus Entertainment Network and participate and contribute to that, because we're right along the same lines as building this community and increasing our global mindset. So it's right in tune with everything you guys are trying to accomplish. But let's get started with our first technical challenge, technical event. We're going to be joined by Nicholas Ray. Look at this fine-looking gentleman. Holy cow. Ooh. He's going to be joining us on Teams all the way from Dubai, where he is working as a group training manager. And we'll see if we can get the connection going here. And I've got a few questions for him, if we can get started. Hey, there he is. Let's see. Nicholas, how are you?
Very good. I see my face is white on the screen.
Yeah, that's a nice looking picture, man. I need to get in touch with whoever's in charge of your headshots. They do a good job.
Sorry, I have a little difficulties hearing you. Sorry.
That's okay. I was just complimenting your picture. That's all.
Thank you very much. Did my best for you.
Yeah, no, it's a nice one. So let's get started. It says here you work as a group training manager in Dubai, but first a little bit about who you are and maybe when you graduated, because you're an alumni of, is it BUAS or are you an NRTV alumni?
I am very proud to say I'm still from the NHTV era. It's been a little while ago, 2010 that I graduated. And since then, exploring the horizons, as we said at the NHTV, took me quite all over the world, ranging from America to Thailand and then the UAE, the Arab Emirates, for the past 8 years.
Okay, that kind of follows into the next question about your experiences so far. of those main places, what have been some of maybe your most memorable or the biggest experiences you've had so far in your professional career?
The thing is, I always worked in F&B, so I was always in operations and managing the venues all around those different countries. And I think the biggest experience that I had, or the experience that really formed me, was moving actually to Thailand, because everything that I knew before got mixed up, and I had to start from scratch and to learn by myself to find myself again. That was the most mind-opening experience.
I can imagine, and that's kind of, I think, what we as an education are trying to tackle here, maybe to make these current students in the audience perhaps a bit more prepared for some of the situations they might face as professionals. What do you think about now BUAS's role in measuring this intercultural competence? What do you think of the significance of it, or some of the strategies maybe we could use to make them maybe a little bit more prepared for some of the things you've experienced?
Was especially the point that you say to be more prepared for future experiences. I think this is the time in life during your studies that you get to prepare to feel more comfortable later in life when it comes to communication, when it comes to recognizing and respecting other cultures, other beliefs, other people. Especially recognizing and respecting the ways of being that are not necessarily your own. I mean, my normal is not your normal, as Hani always tells me. It leads to interact, when we interact with others, that we can build bridges more to increase the trust, respect, and create an understanding across different cultures. Also, if you look at that in business later on, if you look at it, for example, in HR side, it would reduce turnovers, improve engagement across the different perspective of a business, attracting new talents. But if you look at if people will go into marketing side, this would actually lead to more creativity, drive innovation, more insights about local market, and that knowledge would actually make a business more competitive. I think there's more targeted insight when you look at the marketing side. But from a personal side for myself, I think it's nicer to, be able to recognize the diversity and encourage everybody's contribution to, the same goal.
Excellent, thanks. And now you're currently in Dubai, and what's the experience has been there as far as the multicultural environment? I understand it is already a very international kind of hub for business, but you can inform me there. But what's the Dubai experience been from a multicultural environment perspective?
Dubai is a very interesting environment, especially if you look at the fact that we are, as expats in another country, helping to make the country even better than it already is. A marvelous place to really expand yourself. If you look at the mixture of nationalities, 180 nationalities throughout the country, and for us in our business, I work now with a team of approximately 1,000 persons, and more than 73 nationalities. It's quite interesting to bring out the message that everybody will understand and everybody will be on the same page and create the same understanding.
Okay, and we have a few more minutes here. I've got a couple extra questions for you. I'm going to go off script a little bit. Are you ready for these? These are the tough questions.
I like that even more.
Okay. In your experience, what has been, do you remember a specific kind of challenging moment, or if you're willing to share, when have you really kind of now look back and go, ooh, I kind of really messed this up from a cultural perspective and maybe made a huge or significant mistake, and then how did you handle that when it happened? Do you have any fun, interesting, maybe a little embarrassing stories about when you maybe weren't as multiculturally aware as you should have been?
Embarrassing stories, I got heaps of those, so I'll keep it to the more professional ones this time. No, but I think what was for me a big eye-opener I mean, I've always been very direct. And direct means also that sometimes we can be a bit stubborn and stay within our own minds. Like whatever I think is good, whatever I presume to be the truth is my truth, my perspective on things. I've really learned to, put this perspective of being direct, to still have this open attitude, but still be objective as well. I mean, everybody has their own way of looking at things. Everybody has their own truth. And I think discussing that and being open for that brings you to a compromise or an understanding of each other. I mean, I honestly, when I came to Abu Dhabi the first time, a very local setting, as an expat, westernized, thinking, okay, this is the way I've been taught, this is the way I'm going to proceed, and this is the only way we can make this restaurant better. No. I had zero to little understanding of the local culture, how things are run, politics, the ways we engage with others. And that were very interesting 2 years with a lot of roadblocks and a lot of times that I fell down, but I always got up. And that only made me better and more open to others. And I think that's what you really have to learn, that you get an understanding of other persons and be open for various perspectives about things, because it can only improve your communication, decision making, and it just makes your life happier.
Beautiful. Nicholas, thank you so much for taking the time. What time are you watching World Cup over there? Yeah, you're right in the neighborhood.
Yeah. I was rooting for the Netherlands. Unfortunately, that did not go through. But tomorrow night, I'm rooting for France, and yeah, we're gonna take that World Cup home. The best thing here is, I honestly have to say, in an Emirate country, everybody watches together. So even if you are from different nationalities, different cultures, you sit together and you celebrate a win, and you celebrate it together, and that's the beautiful thing.
That is beautiful. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate the time, and take care.
Pleasure. Bye.
All right. You're the next guy. Did you guys see my picture at the beginning of this? It looks nothing like this. And it's all the photographer. It has nothing to do with anything else. I blame the photographer. All right, our next guest coming up here is what I would call a real international man of mystery, a citizen of the world, if you will. And he's going to talk about his own way of developing intercultural competence. He's going to share his experiences about his time abroad and really inform us all on the topic. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Bond, Adib Bond. Welcome him to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Some of you know me as the marketing lecturer, but today I'm going to be talking about a far less interesting topic, my life, okay? I'll try to make it as interesting as possible, but yeah. So, my name is Adib. You could disregard my surname because I barely know how to pronounce it. Actually, I relate as male, so I go with the pronouns he and him. And I consider myself to be transnational. Transnational means not belonging to a certain nation or nationality. And the reason I feel that way and identify as that way is because throughout my years and my life, I actually lived in more than 5 countries, 6 cities to be exact. So I was born in 1985 in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE. So, of course, it wasn't back then the same as it is today, as Nicholas, was living. And I was actually born exactly 37 years ago, so today is my birthday. I spent 18 years of my life in Abu Dhabi. And then I actually decided in 2003 to do my bachelor's in Lebanon, in Beirut, as I never saw the country of my passport then. So I spent a few years there, and then I moved to Australia, to Melbourne, where I did my master's in international business. And it was really my first global experience outside of the Middle East. I then came back to Beirut, Lebanon, worked in Heineken for my first job as a junior brand manager. And then just 2 years later, I got poached by L'Oréal in Dubai to go work as a regional brand manager. And I stayed there for 3 years until L'Oréal shipped me to the headquarters in Paris for a global marketing role there, which was very exciting, where I lived 3 years, and then in 2018 I moved to Amsterdam, Netherlands. So yes, 5 different countries, 6 different cities, that's a lot, I think. But yeah, it actually stretched my mind, and I'll tell you why. First, I want to focus on my childhood, so the first 18 years of my life when I was, in Abu Dhabi, and then went to Beirut, Lebanon. So pretty much in the Middle East there, right? And because I was brought up in the Middle East, I was programmed to think in a specific way as an element of my culture, right? And just warning, the next slide I'm not proud of. So I'm just exposing my ethnocentrism in front of you guys. So please don't judge me because I'm actually ashamed of some of the things I'm going to show you right now. But back then, what I thought is I had a few misconceptions and stereotypes, right? First of all, I thought that all Asian, when you say Asian, I directly thought Chinese, right? I wasn't really educated about the fact that Asia is not China only, right? There's so many cultures and subcultures within Asia. So this was a stereotype I actually had, being brought up in the Middle East and being a bit ignorant about other places in the world, right? Another thing I thought about as well is, I was a kid, I used to love spaghetti, and I used to always think that, I want to be Italian because I just want to eat spaghetti every day. So I really thought that Italians ate spaghetti every single day, right? And that was really a genuine thought I had. And of course, being Middle Eastern, I also thought, Americans are against us, they hate us, and I thought that all French people are rude, because I simply had a classmate when I was growing up who was French, and she was so annoying and rude. So I kindly just generalized, and I'm like, okay, you know what, all French people are rude as well. Great, so that was all during my time in the Middle East, when I was, in Abu Dhabi and then in Beirut, Lebanon. And then in 2007, I moved to Melbourne, Australia, for my first kind of, getting out of the Middle East. I'm starting to learn, I'm starting to mingle with new cultures. And Australia being very close to the Asian continent, I actually met, and most of my classmates were from different parts of Asia, right? So I have classmates from Thailand, from Vietnam, from everywhere in Asia, and I started to learn much more about these cultures and getting really interested in these cultures. And then I realized that actually within Asia, there are so many different cultures, so beautiful, and so different to each other. A Malaysian isn't at all like a Singaporean, which isn't at all like an Indian, which isn't at all like a Chinese. So yes, this discredited my first stereotype when I was growing up. Also, my best friend in Australia was Italian, and I quickly learned that actually Italians eat things that are more than spaghetti. However, I still did think that Americans hate us and that all French people are rude, because I wasn't exposed to any Americans or French during that time. Now, I was also exposed to stereotypes, because I think people in Australia also have stereotypes about me, right? And actually, I was surprised, and they were really genuine thoughts that they had. They thought that my dad goes to work riding a camel every day, because I'm from the Middle East. Yes, that is true, okay? I have been asked that question. Do you ride camels to go to work and to school as well? They also were surprised when I'm talking to my mom, or I'm in contact, or I'm chatting with my friend in the Middle East. They're like, why, you have internet there? So yes, we do have internet there. So again, misconceptions, generalizations, and stereotypes that they held. And they also thought that all Arabs mean Muslim, right? Arab equal Muslim, which isn't correct, actually. So I'm not a Muslim myself, but that is a very common misconception. Again, stereotyping and generalization there. Good, but also, Middle East Australia, I had to adapt to a lot of things, because it's quite different in culture. Coming out of the Middle East, going to Australia for the first time, Middle East is a high context culture versus Australia, which is much lower context. What does that mean? In the Middle East, people are closer to each other, so we already have a lot of information. We don't need a lot of information to be fed to us. Versus in Australia, because relationships are a bit more shallow, so you need to give more information. So that, and that's quite hard because, you know, was forced to give so much information to every encounter I was having with an Australian person, or even with an international person in Australia. Space, you know, your personal bubbles change. In the Middle East, we have smaller personal bubbles. It's okay to be closer to each other, closer to your friends. You know, I give 3 kisses to my friends, or even strangers that I meet for the first time. Whereas in Australia, they have large personal bubbles. You can't, you know, being too close to someone could be very uncomfortable. You definitely don't give 3 kisses to someone you haven't met before, okay? So again, these are the things I really needed to adapt to and to be aware of in a different culture. Time. In the Middle East, time is very polychronic, so it's not something that's materialized, whereas in Australia, it's like material. It's something that you own. You could waste it, you could spend it, you could gain it, you could do things with time. It's like a material, whereas in the Middle East, it's not. And you know, for people that have been to Dubai, or probably even Nicholas would know this word, we have a word called inshallah, which means, you know, if God wants. And we use it like, you know, are you gonna visit me today? Inshallah, maybe yes, maybe no, maybe tomorrow. It's gonna happen, but we don't know when, right? In Australia, it's not like that. It's really, you know, linear and monochronic. I remember in December, a friend of mine was like, do you want to have dinner in, you know, January 27th of next year? I'm like, wow, that's like, I don't even know what I'll be doing then. So again, it's not right or wrong, it's just different, right? So yeah, quite an experience there in Australia. And then I moved, well, I'm gonna fast forward to when I moved to Paris, France, because that's, you know, another eye-opener. First of all, I started working with a lot of Americans, and of course, I was living in Paris, France, so I also realized that, you know, these 2 stereotypes I had, you know, growing up are invalid, actually. But also, you know, working in a global atmosphere and with global consumers also opened my eyes to different cultures, right? So one of the markets I was handling when I was in Australia was South Africa, and I developed the first hair food for South Africans under the Garnier brand. Now, this was an interesting discovery, but actually 7% of South Africans only use shampoo, whereas the other 93 actually use hair foods and hair moisturizers. So what are hair foods? Hair foods are basically, they're like petroleum jelly, so if you think about, you know, the texture of Vaseline, and they're applied on the roots of the hair, because that's, you know, for them hair is like a tree. You need to feed the roots for it to grow well, right? And they have a specific type of hair as well. Now, if you are thinking, when I show you this, interesting, then you're all good. But if you're thinking something like this is weird, then you're probably ethnocentric and you kind of need to work on your ethnocentrism, yeah, and be more exposed to different cultures. Finally, my last stop in Diageo, 2018, just 4 years ago. I moved to Amsterdam and I became the marketing director of Tanqueray Gin. Now, at that point, I was already, you know, traveled to Australia, traveled to France, Dubai, Beirut, so met a lot of people. But even after all of this, I still had a blunder. I still had a blooper there at work. So the first campaign I developed for Tanqueray was this campaign here, so unmistakably Tanqueray. And the whole idea of this campaign is, you know, the taste of Tanqueray is so distinctive that even with a blindfold, you could, you know that it is Tanqueray. It's very unmistakable, right? And this has been a success all over the world, except for one place, actually. There is one country where this ad totally backfired. Is anyone here from Mexico? No one from Mexico? So Mexico was the country where this ad backfired, and do you know why? Because in Mexico, blindfolds are very much associated with kidnapping because they have a very big culture of kidnapping actually there. So this ad totally backfired there because of my insensitivity and my, well, ignorance towards Mexican culture. So I admit that, right? And of course, we had to pull this ad back. And when we developed a further launch, which is the launch of Blackcurrant Royale, We still wanted to use the blindfold in all other markets, which aren't Mexico, because they have become a very important key brand asset for Tanqueray. But for Mexico, we had to develop a specific communication without being culturally sensitive, so not using the blindfold, not to kind of have negative connotations. Good, so my takeout out of my life story is there is no right or wrong culture, there is just different cultures, and each is so beautiful in its own way. So again, try to see culture from the lens of an outsider from the world versus from the lens of your own culture. Ethnocentrism, generalization, stereotyping, these are inevitable. We all have them, and we will never be able to get rid of all of them. Never. Because we're all an element of, and acculturated, we're all an element of our culture. We were brought up in a certain way, in a certain environment, and this is programmed in you. It's so hard to unlearn everything you've learned growing up. And finally, the key is, if there is something you can do about it to become, to develop a more global mindset is, one, become self-aware when you actually stereotype, or when you do something that feels a bit ethnocentric, or when you look at something from the lens of your culture. Just be aware of it. Be like, oh, maybe I am stereotyping. Maybe this is not right. Maybe I am looking at it from the reference of my culture. And second is, expose yourself to more and more cultures. Travel. We all love traveling, so travel. But also surround yourself, with friends that are from different cultures, etc., because it's super enriching and it will definitely stretch your mind. And going into the future, there is no workplace in 2022 which is monocultural. You are going to have colleagues, you're going to have customers, you're going to have friends from different cultures. So it's important for you to develop this global mindset. And that was it. Thank you very much.
So good. Thank you. Great stuff. And I think I'm guilty of this, or I try and stay aware of this as much as possible. Just because it's different than what we're used to, and even sometimes hard to understand, even if we try to understand certain parts of a culture, it's still hard for us to wrap our head around it. That doesn't make it bad or wrong. It just makes it, again, different. And the more we can strive to at least understand, and maybe we don't end up agreeing or getting it, it's still confusing to us, the less we can jump to these conclusions and stereotypes and negative outcomes, the better off we're going to be in our personal and professional lives and as a society. And look at all these alumni. An alumni panel has been put together, one of which is here in person. Yeah, Tim, come on up. Tim Smith was nice enough to be here in person. And then we've got Ivana and Yost and Timothy joining us all from different parts of the world via, I think, Teams Magic again. Yes. You can come on up and I think have a seat, make yourself comfortable. And again, more beautiful pictures. I really got to work on my profile picture game. I'm lagging way behind. All right. Tim, there went a mic. We can start with you while we're working on connecting the rest of the panel together. Looks like you're HM, which is Hotel Management. I'm getting the abbreviations. A former HM student, working account management, connectivity, and with Marriott International. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your professional experience so far?
Yes, I'd love to tell you a little bit about my journey so far. So I'm right here in the Netherlands right now, but I actually do live in Hong Kong. So I'm just here for my holidays. So
Oh, nice.
you got me on my break. So I've been in hotel management since I graduated. So there is a really interesting career in hospitality. I'll tell you that. And all of my career is actually in revenue management. Mr. Brown here in front of me is also an experienced revenue professional. And it's a very interesting career path. which I followed up until really my last role. So I've been in various different revenue management roles, starting in Brussels, which is where I met my wife. We moved to Singapore together, where we worked for Starwood Hotels and Resorts. And after Starwood Hotels and Resorts was bought by Marriott, I decided to leave and pursue other jobs within the hospitality industry. So I worked for a couple of different companies. You might know some of them, you might not know some of them. One is Dorset Hospitality, which is a local Hong Kong-based family-owned hotel group. Basically a very rich family that wants to own hotels in many places around the world. And the second one in Hong Kong was Langham Hospitality. Probably a bit more well-known. They have a hotel in London as well, which is quite famous. But also, again, a very rich family that wants to own hotels, which is what you do in Hong Kong when you're rich. But then I decided to move back to Marriott, because I do appreciate working for bigger chains. I think it helps grow your career. The only downside is that I had to move out of revenue management. So I'm on the dark side now. I'm on sales, a bit more sales, which is fun as well. But I think eventually you'll see me heading to revenue management.
You can see in sales very clearly some of this cultural mindset being very important, but as something as straightforward or more clinical as revenue management, did you also experience cultural awareness or cultural challenges based on something as seeing, those are numbers, and numbers are numbers, it should be pretty straightforward despite the culture, or did you also see differences even in that area of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always a battle between sales and revenue management, right? There will always be that kind of healthy balance of having to find the right piece of business for a hotel. And once you're in revenue management, you might not always see the sales side of things and the other way around. So now I'm on the other side, and it definitely gives me a better perspective of what my sales colleagues were trying to tell me.
Sure. All right. Well, it looks like we got our technical challenges figured out. Hello, everybody in Teams land. Thanks for joining us. And it's about the questions from the students. Hi. It's about the questions that have been prepared by these students. So I'm going to pull questions out from the barrel. And I think I'm going to start with an orange one. Orange is for our facility management colleagues. So first I want to ask from class 4, it looks like Ismay. Ismay from class 4. Hello? Yeah, stand up. There you are. If this is Ismay's question, we're going to get to you so you can follow up on it and comment on it if you want. But the question, this is primarily going to be for Ivana and Joost. How do you manage a team with different cultures in an equal manner? So if you've got a team with different cultures, how would you manage that in an equal way? Ivana, do you want to take it? Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you all can hear me well.
We can.
So I currently have a team with a mixture of cultures in there. So I will try to identify what is important to them. I will try to celebrate what we can celebrate. So we have on-site kind of a calendar with events or national days that are important to team members within my team. And we would celebrate that together, and that would come with a bit of education towards others as well, for them to understand the different cultures.
If part of your team was your culture and then part of the rest of the team was a different culture, did you feel that maybe some of the members of the other cultures felt that you were playing favorites or took lean towards members of your own culture? Did you have to overcompensate for that in any way? Were you able to hear that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, that definitely did happen. This is where you have to have a fine balance. And again, the key is communication in that story.
Yeah, and transparency, I imagine, as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Esme in the back, great question. Did you want to follow up anything, or did I cover it? No, it was fine. So thank you. Let's move on. I got a blue one from Fabian. Looks like I can't. Tim. Maybe it's Tim? I got to read the question one too. Oh, I can read the question. I was looking for the name. Is he here? Fabian? Tim?
Fabian.
Yeah.
HM1. Fabian.
Oh, HM1. Class 1 Fabian, where are you? Stand to O, right there. All right. This is in case, Fabian, if you want to follow up. Yeah, if you want to like follow up on the answer, you can just yell it at me, yeah? So here's the question. Timothy, we haven't heard from you yet. Hello? Let's give this one to you. It is, how did you involve the international student during your study? So how did you get involved or involve international students during your study?
All right, during my study, actually, good question. That's part of why I ended up here. I'm not sure if we still have a double degree program, but I decided to go international myself and moved to the United States to study in Flagstaff, Arizona. So I tried to immerse myself, but back when I was in Breda and I wanted to kind of mingle with the international students, I think most important was that you continue to communicate with them and make sure you include them, especially verbally. I think a lot of times we like to fall back on our mother tongue and we like to speak Dutch, and we realize there's 9 Dutch people around the table and there's one person who's not. I would like to stay consistent and just make sure to speak a language that everyone understands, even if it's for a joke or anything on the side. Just be very consistent with it, and that's kind of something that you can carry through into your professional life later on, because you'll have little batches of people that come from different backgrounds or different countries, and I try to encourage everyone to please speak the same language so we can understand each other. And otherwise, very often people might get the notice that you might be talking about them because they can't understand what you're saying, and they're going to assume that you're going to have a conversation that you might not be having. So I would just say stay consistent with your language and make sure that everyone can understand what you're saying.
That's great advice, Timothy. And I hear a lot. It's speak English, you guys. Oh, it was nothing important. That's always what I hear when everyone switches to their mother tongue and leaves out someone. Oh, don't worry, it wasn't important. But I think for people's inclusiveness and feeling connected to the group, everything, even just a little gossip or a little joke or something, is important to include everyone. And using a common language is very, very good. So thanks for that. And then finally, we're going to get the last member of our panel involved. Yost, are you ready? You ready for this one? I dug out a tough question from Britt Von Etten. Britt, hi. If you want to follow up on this, just let us know. It looks like you had one question and you changed your mind, so I'll read the other one. Ready, Yost? It's, what is your best tip for an exchange or a placement? So your best tip for an exchange or a placement?
Best tip. I think I have 2. For me, it's a bit, what I chose in my second year was more the location rather than maybe the location and the culture and kind of the way what I wanted to do at that point in time. So I chose Australia. One thing to improve my English. One thing was to actually, as a facility student, I wanted to actually see if hotel management was at the Hilton. It was kind of giving me that freedom to kind of like see the hotel management side as well, if that was maybe more my preference. So I think it can be giving try to think about a placement as a sort of a testing phase of what would you potentially like to do, or what are you thinking of maybe going into for the future. And a placement is kind of like a perfect opportunity to for a 6 months placement or for however long it is, to kind of get that taste, kind of see if it fits with you, yes or no. And if it doesn't fit with you, especially in the second year, you go back, it's not a problem. You continue with your studies and you go ahead. I would say for the 4th year, maybe it's good to kind of think about, if you're doing a placement, where would you like to land in the future? Because I think for me, previous students as well, it's a perfect opportunity to actually get a job and to kind of like roll into it, because after that 6 months or 9 months stint, you actually give a good view of how you are, how you operate, what your value is to that company. And if you like it and they like it, the likelihood is, if they have an opening, if they have the opportunity, straight away you can kind of like commence with your career, which is a really good jump start, I would say.
Okay, great. I'm seeing some nodding heads from the rest of the panel. Would anyone else like to add on to that? Some tips? A couple of tips for exchanges or placements besides what Joost already mentioned?
I think if you're going into hotel management, maybe figure out in which area of hotel management you want to end up in. Are you interested in going into the resort industry? Do you want to be in urban areas? Just kind of define for yourself where you want to be in terms of the kind of the levels of hotels that are out there. Even if you think about luxury levels, do you want to be at a full service? Do you want to be at a luxury property? And kind of define that for yourself going into your second year if you can, because we've got so many options of traveling and experimenting things. I would think about that.
All right, great. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with what Joost and Tim said. I think the second year for me was really about really developing myself as a person. It's not necessarily so much about what do I want to do in the future. I went to Australia as well, and that was a great experience for me to be on my own, right? For the first time, to not live with somebody that prepares my meals and to get my bag ready, right? You know, that kind of stuff. So really, I left as a young man. I came back a lot more mature, at least so I think. But the fourth year, or I don't know if it's still the same. Yes, thank you. That's really more what Joost said as well. You need to start thinking about what you want to do as the next step, right? So I took a very different path. I actually studied here for 5 years. I liked it, I enjoyed it. I had a bit more time to figure out what I wanted, right? And because of that, I actually prepared myself a lot better for what was next. But yes, in that sense, fully agree that the second year is a bit more about developing yourself, potentially having a little bit more fun. And the fourth year is really about start thinking ahead about your future.
Okay. And I'm hearing location and location. Location geographically where you might be interested in, like Australia, and then location within the type of company. So high end, low end, and that location within the industry that you might be interested in. All right, Ivana, we're coming back to you. Are you ready?
Of course.
It looks like Pine. P-I-E-N. Peen. Yeah, there, hi. The question is, FM3, yeah, that's you? Perfect. Why did you choose the country that you went to, or why not a different country? So why'd you choose where you ended up and not somewhere else?
Okay. So for my first placement, I chose to be in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. The reason for me that I chose to be there is that I very much wanted to work in a Southeast Asia country, in that area, as I've worked with cultures before, particularly Indonesian and Filipino. And I think the contrast with Dutch culture is so big that there was a lot for me to learn there. Besides the actual placement, I think within the country itself and the life that you live during your placement, it was a great learning curve for me.
And why not somewhere else?
Why not somewhere else? It was also a bit looking at the opportunities that were out there. There were certain opportunities out there that I believe were not good for me. In terms of the placement itself, it was not something that I wanted to pursue at all. So those locations or countries, so to say, I kind of dismissed them because of it.
Okay, fantastic. Heinz, good? Do you have a follow-up on that, or is that good? Good? Good. Okay. Let's go back. Timothy, here's one from Sophie, HM2. Sophie, where are you? Stand up. Yep, hi. All right, the question is, can you train your global mindset to be more open? So can you train your global mindset being more open?
Yeah, yes and no. I'm lucky that I've worked with people who have helped me coach along the way. And I think that's important to kind of find a mentor wherever you are and ask for a lot of feedback whenever you can to kind of help have other people help you. So to coach yourself, yeah, it comes with a lot of years of experience, and I looked at a little bit of the guidelines that you're being given, and one of them is open-mindedness, and I think that's something you can do very consciously to go into situations with other cultures or people or languages, and keep a very open mind that they might not think like you, they might not even look like you, they might not talk like you, but try to understand them. Try not to be too quick to form an opinion. I think that's the main thing that you can do to kind of train yourself. Just open yourself up and wait to form an opinion until you really understand what they're trying to tell you.
Okay, good. You want to follow up on that, or is it good? Good, okay. No one wants follow-up questions. Let's see, we'll get through as many of these as we can. And I need to train my global mindset on how to pronounce names. Xina. Xina, how do I say it? Xina, I was close. Let's see, let's go with Timothy. Let's try this one and then we'll ask Tim for his feedback too. What was something valuable that you have learned while living or working where you're at? So something valuable you learned living and working where you are.
Valuable lessons. Gotta pick out a good one here. Well, I think where I am in the United States, something that is very obvious is that they say it's the country of opportunity, and I feel like that's really true. I think that where I am here in the U.S., maybe more than I felt like that was the case in the Netherlands. Hard work gets recognized regardless of where you're from. Sometimes I feel like you can come into an organization because you know people or they know your family or anything like that. It feels like everyone from this country is from somewhere else. This is immigrants or second or third generation immigrants, and they don't really look at it that way. They're very impartial in how they decide who gets maybe their promotion, yes or no. And I've noticed as I was growing my career within Hilton that even though I was fairly young, that was never really being taken into consideration. They say we have more tenured people with more experience, but at this moment we think you're the best pick, regardless of maybe how young I am or maybe how foreign I was.
All right, great. And you're currently in Flagstaff, or you went on exchange in Flagstaff? Where are you currently in the U.S.?
Oh, I'm just on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. So from my hotel, I have the Pentagon on my left, and I can see the Capitol building on my right.
That's pretty cool. Good. And Tim, we'll do the same question for you. Something valuable that you learned while you were living or working where you are?
Sure. Good question. I think for me, the most valuable lesson that I learned being away from my home, and especially when I was in Singapore and Hong Kong, is to stay humble. At the end of the day, you're a guest in somebody else's country. At least that's how I feel. You try to adapt to as much as you can to the local customs, but you'll never be local unless you would choose to settle there, I guess. But for me, it's really about understanding that you're really a guest in a certain country, and that means that you sometimes have to adapt to what is the norm in a country, and that you cannot always do the things that you were able to do in your own country. And especially in Hong Kong, I don't know if you followed the news, there's a lot of restrictions that have been applied recently.
No doubt. Thank you guys. All right, Maxine from class 2, where are you at? Hi, stand up, be proud. Let's go back to Joost for this one. How was it to work abroad and leave family and friends behind? So what was it like leaving your family and friends behind to go work abroad? Good question.
Yeah, very good question. Thank you. It's a difficult one because I think during the internships, you don't really think about it because it's especially in the second year, I was like, okay, I'm going to be gone for like 6-7 months and I'm going to be back. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's a big leap. It's a big, good step for opportunity for being on yourself. But then kind of, you're going to come back. So not a real big impact, I would say, on your personal life long term. In my fourth year, I did decide to go to Paris and actually stayed there for about 7 years. I think it was easier for me because it depends on where you go outside of the Netherlands. So if you go to Belgium, if you go to Germany, rather like you can get a train, you can get a car, and you can relatively quickly come back. So it's really like an important element for you to decide personally of how much value and how much maybe even dependence. Sometimes it sounds bad, but how much do you need and how much is that comfort blanket for you and how much do you really want to be around family and friends? Because it is a conscious decision, because you will, you know, there is 100% so many benefits of being outside your country, experience new people, new cultures, new things, but you will miss things like birthdays, the good stuff, the bad stuff, everything. You're not going to be able to travel back if you're further away. The further away, the more it's going to be on a maybe an annual basis, quarterly basis. If you're lucky, monthly. For me as well, it's a good thing of what your job is. So my job included a lot of travel, and I was able to actually hop on a plane and maybe stop over in the Netherlands and then come back to Paris. So you're trying to be a lot of creative as well to kind of get your fix of family and friends and try to make it happen and make it fit your schedule.
Yeah, good. Good. Follow-up question on that? We got it? All right, it looks like Quinty next from class 2. Hi. And we'll go back to Ivana for this one. What was the hardest part of your international experience? Maybe I'll ask several of you can start thinking about this. What's the hardest part of being international? Maybe it's being away from family and friends like we were just talking about. Well, Ivana, you can start.
I guess the beginning might seem very hard, but for some reason I feel like you might prepare yourself for it. So some people might feel like that heavy point might be in the beginning of moving somewhere. But for me personally, it actually came down the line, years down the line. All of a sudden, like everybody went through the same thing with COVID, and then all of a sudden it becomes really important to be able to go and see your family whilst we all couldn't. So I think that was, of course, a very hard moment. Besides that, I noticed that my life back home is also evolving. So all of a sudden things happen in your family, people maybe having children, people getting married. And those become tricky moments, because when do you choose to be there? And you also want to make sure that you're fair to everyone. And then you have your busy life, well, for me then in London, where I live. So it's just juggling all of that at the same time.
Okay. Timothy, similar or a different perspective?
No, I'm gonna stay on the same line. It's just difficult to be away from friends and family sometimes, and I know Ivana says it came later down the line. Same for me. I got a 1-year-old now, and then you're asking yourself, how many birthdays am I gonna allow my family not to be there? So it's yeah, and I think it becomes harder later in life, but not so much when I was by myself, or it was just me and my wife, and we were absorbed by our jobs, which was perfectly okay.
Oops, I think you accidentally muted yourself.
Oh, sorry, I missed you. No, but like Ivana said, I think it's going to come later in life. Not so much early on when you got the excitement of your job, but when your parents might be getting sick, or your family's getting married and children, that's when when it's going to be nice to have a social system, and sometimes you don't have that when you go abroad.
Yeah, technology can take you so far with FaceTiming and things like that, but sometimes nothing replaces being there, especially with the kids and stuff. All right, let's move on to a question from Susanna from class 10, it looks like. Susanna. Oh, Susanna. That's it. No? Here? Somewhere? Tim, I'm gonna ask this one to you. How did you deal with people who spoke Dutch all the time when you were with them? So
I'll reverse that one.
Yeah.
Because I speak Dutch.
I guess you could imagine where you're at. Everyone's speaking that
right.
language. Yeah.
I think
How do
it
you
goes
do
back to what was discussed earlier. Right? I think it's about making the conscious effort of not speaking a different language than somebody else at the table. Right? In Hong Kong, people speak Cantonese. I don't speak Cantonese. If we're having a meeting and people are speaking Cantonese, it's obviously not very inclusive and obviously not very helpful to get things done. So I think you should be, the people that obviously don't speak the same language should make an effort to, or should be able to speak up and say, hey, I cannot understand this language, can you please adapt to a more this language? But the other people should also obviously try to make a conscious effort of being aware that not everybody speaks that language.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting, we talk about the importance of the Dutch being aware and then choosing to speak English, but the challenge it is for a non-Dutch speaker in this example to speak up, yeah, and to say, and I think in a professional environment, in this case in school, go ahead and speak up, be very authoritative with it, and reach out to your lecturers. I know in my academy, we will support you in pushing to an all-English environment so everyone feels included. Where it becomes more of a challenge, and I'll look to the panel and maybe for some of your insights, is in these social situations. So, okay, fine, class, everyone's speaking English, teacher will yell at you if you don't speak English, that's great, but walking to the bus, getting on the bus, going to the bar, your teacher's not there to shake their finger at them to get them to speak English all the time. So that's a tough one. Does anyone in the panel maybe have some insight? And because you've been in those experiences, I'm sure socially out with colleagues as well, how you can speak up and maybe still remember you're a guest in the country. So that's a real tough one. Anyone have some insights there?
I can do it maybe in reverse. So because I went actually to Paris, knowing that my French was, I would say, very limited was a nice way of putting my language skills. So I went knowing that I didn't know any French and was going to be very much in trouble understanding everyone. I think the first thing you should do, maybe even when you are there for about 4 years in school, is even learning a little bit of the language where you are moving to. So in your case, it's the Netherlands. In my case, it was France, it was French. It does help enormously because people do appreciate the effort that you put in. Doesn't matter if you make mistakes, doesn't matter how badly you are. People will respect and appreciate the effort that you put in actually learning the language. Is part of their culture, and it will make you feel more comfortable as well. In job-wise, I think sometimes it's kind of good to keep the language local, even if you as an outsider might not fully understand it, because it makes the other people more comfortable. So there's sometimes as well where you cannot force people to speak a common language, and you need to be aware of other people's comfort zones. And if the job is to kind of like get them to understand something or really to train something out, something being done in local language is a very key element. So if you can learn the language, perfect. Otherwise, yeah, just to try to do a couple of words will go a long way.
Naturally. Yeah. Good advice. All right, let's move on. We got another blue one from Amber, class 10. Amber, where are you at? Hello? Oh, well. What did you do to feel at home in a new environment? So this is right up in line with kind of what we've been talking about. Language is huge, family is huge. So what are the things you did do to make yourself feel a little bit more at home in the new environment? Tim?
Yeah, good question again. I think it all comes down to effort again. You got to make the effort to try to learn a new place, try to learn a new culture, and try to see if you can find your way in that lifestyle. It's hard. It's definitely not easy, especially if it's a really different culture than the one you're used to. But it's really about trying and just taking baby steps. Yeah,
embracing it. I think if you choose, it's a conscious choice you've all made, right? So you have to kind of go into that with an open mind and a desire to experience new culture and experience new things, not necessarily this desire to go there and feel like home. Oh, I went all the way there and I want it to be just like home. Then why wouldn't you just stay home? Am I off base with that a little bit? No? Anna from class 4. I'm sure right there. Ivana, this is for you. Can you name a challenge in working in a multicultural environment? So I think we've been covering quite a few, but what's a top one for you? A challenge working in that multicultural environment?
It's very easy to misunderstand people, is what I've learned. It's very easy to make assumptions. It's very easy to right away have your judgment ready. And sometimes it goes almost natural, because if it's something that we don't know about, or if you, with whatever background you have, are not used to, it's almost natural, that first response, to kind of reject it. And I think it's recognizing that moment, step over it, and then have that open mind and try to understand where people are coming from. I think it's very easy to misunderstand someone.
All right, try to avoid jumping to conclusions too much, yeah? All right, let's see. Fleur from class, I can't tell. Fleur Van Damme. Van Damme? Oh, right in the front row. Hello. How did you deal with homesickness? I think we're getting a pattern of questions here. So, Timothy, why don't you take this one? How'd you deal with the homesickness?
Yeah, good question. Things have evolved, luckily, over the years, because back when I was doing my second-year internship, I was, what is that, maybe 15 years ago? And then I had to email and set up a Skype date and time and make sure our accounts are lined up. And then we had very spotty connections, so it was very hard to communicate with people you loved. But nowadays, it is easy. I will admit, this morning I drove in and I FaceTime with my mom on the way to work, and I alternate between my mom, my brother, my sister. Actually, most of my family says they talk to me more now than when I was living in Breda. So I try to do that, and technology makes it really easy. So we're lucky to live in these times.
That's been my experience as well. I joke with my mom that I talk to her more now every Sunday. It's a point on FaceTime than I did when I lived 3 hours away, in Arizona. So different solutions for homesickness from any of you, but technology and using that technology is a big one. Bringing some of your own food back home with you when you visit.
Absolutely, but also get some of your friends over if you have the opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I think we're gonna get to the wrap up on this. We'll ask a couple more questions. I think we're getting to a pattern on some of these questions. Everyone's kind of thinking the same thing. But I will ask you guys all for kind of your final thoughts. So maybe if there's something you would like to share with the students that hasn't been covered already in the questions, to kind of maybe each of you can take a couple of minutes to kind of give some final thoughts on this topic, and then that should wrap it up nicely. But one more question here. What is your biggest culture shock? So I think we can quickly kind of go through the four of you too, because I'm interested in this one. This is from, it looks like Jay. So Jay Marks asked this question. Anyways, biggest culture shock. We'll start up here with Tim.
I think it was the first time I went to Asia. Actually, we landed in Bangkok, and we went to the local Chinese market in Bangkok, and I just can't believe what I saw there. That's something I still vividly remember. But, yeah.
From specifically what you saw, or examples of some of the things?
Kind of the smells, everything was so different. It was my first time out of and then back in Europe.
So all the sights and sounds, the smells, the sights, the sounds,
all the different
sensory overload,
sensory, yeah.
Shocking. Okay, great. Joost, how about you? Biggest
It's a difficult one to kind of like pin down. Probably travel to Dubai, landing at 3 o'clock in the morning and having the notion that it's actually colder at night, but being 37 degrees. Everyone being absolutely dressed very differently than what I'm used to. Traveling everywhere by car, everything is air conditioned. Everyone is a lot different as well, because Dubai is one of those cities or one of those places where no one is really most of the time coming from the country there. It's like a multicultural pot. So it's kind of, it was an interesting experience to have that much changes and differences from what I'm used to all in one place.
Sure. Timothy?
This is probably going to be foreign for a lot of you folks, but working in a union environment blew my mind, and this is kind of the norm for the U.S. and bigger hotels. For the Dutch people, I'm talking about vakbonden. But everyone they put into a little box, and they got a job description, and in some hotels they will not venture outside of that job description. And I came out of I think it was my first week of working in a hotel, and there's a lot of glasses on the table. And it's been sitting there in the lounge for a while, and I'm standing behind the front desk. And at some point, I'm going up to the bar, and I got 3 people standing there. Lounge is empty, 3 employees. And I say, hey, can someone grab those glasses? It kind of looks silly. And they're telling me, yeah, well, that's none of our jobs. What are you talking about? Like, you're all doing nothing. Like, who's supposed to get the glasses? And they start to introduce themselves, and like, well, I'm the bar back, and he's the bartender, and he's the server, and none of us collect glasses around here. Well, who does that? Like, well, that's the busboy. Well, where is he? Well, he is sick today. Like, so is no one going to grab the glasses today? Well, that's going to be the manager's problem. And that just blew my mind, because I came out of an environment, and I worked in restaurants and bars, and we just did everything. And that was normal. You were on the clock, and you were doing whatever was necessary. But it's not like that everywhere. And that was a shock to me.
That's a big one. And finally, Ivana.
I think for me it was quite the shock that I was working when the time came that I went from internship to Malaysia. Majority of the management was either Chinese Malay or Indian Malay, and within meetings they would talk about certain projects, and I did have my own few projects within that company, and I remember that one of the managers had a date wrong, or a deadline had changed, so I did speak up in the meeting to say, well, actually the deadline has come forward now by 3 days, and after the meeting I was very, very clearly told that I should never speak up anymore. Because I should respect the hierarchy of the company, of that meeting, really. As well as I'm one of the youngest ones in the room, so I should also respect people that are older than me. So I shouldn't speak up at that point in time. I should have kept it to myself, and I should have addressed it afterwards. And for me, that was something really new, because I thought, okay, I thought it's normal to like take part in that meeting, but that was not the way the meeting was set up. So it was quite a shock. And once you understand it, you'll deal with it. But at the time, I was quite surprised.
I bet. For me, easily, Zwarte Piet was the biggest culture shock for me. I still remember that first sighting in the office like it was yesterday. All right. Finally, Catalina has a question from Class 8. Hello? Is there a country you were looking forward to, but then disappointed when you were there? And if you got to a place, maybe a country or a city or a destination, you really had this idea, maybe it was some of these stereotypes in your mind, or this envisioning how you thought the culture and the place would be, and then you arrived and it didn't live up to those expectations in some way. Is there an example of that? And if so, in what ways were you maybe less surprised than you were imagining? And if anyone has an answer to that, I'll open it up. But Joost, we'll start with you. Do you have one?
Not in a negative way, but positively surprised, yes. I think as well, like I think with all of these cultural programs, I think you're kind of like primed from when you are born and when you grow up. There's a couple of biases that kind of like creep in. And one of them, sadly enough in the Netherlands, is that Moroccan people and Turkish people were always somehow crept in my mind with news of somehow not really being open and friendly and that kind of stuff. So I went in with a very wrong perception to Istanbul, working there, and I was just over the moon, like positively surprised by the hospitality, the friendliness of people, and like my entire perception of that culture was completely in one, like in a couple of days that I was there, absolutely trashed in a good way, of like, wow, it's kind of like so bad that if you don't take the first step, be that open-mindedness and actually challenge yourself in what you actually maybe unconsciously believed is to be true. If you don't ever have that opportunity to challenge that by visiting that country or by speaking to the people and learning about these different cultures, you might be stuck with those biases so much. I've been exposed to so many different things, and I was like, well, it's kind of like one of the biggest gifts I think you can have. Yes, there's a lot of sacrifice, but the gift that it gives you is, in my mind, at this point, so much greater than the sacrifices.
Yeah, similar to what Adib said earlier as well when he was on stage. So I just want to give you guys a couple of moments to wrap up, and you can just say, it was nice being here, goodbye. But I wanted to give you a chance, if there was something, oh, I wish I could have shared this, and we didn't get to it through the questions or anything, I want to give you a chance to maybe, some final thoughts, if you will. Ivana, we'll start with you.
A few of the questions were really hinted at some of maybe the negative aspects that you might have in your mind at the moment. I'm thinking about homesick or what is difficult. I would say there's probably a million reasons to think of why you shouldn't move abroad. Try not to focus yourself too much on that. Be open-minded and also just explore it. This actually gives you a great opportunity to dip your toe in that cold water before taking the actual dive. Your placement is there to do that. So do try to stay clear of these negative thoughts. Try to focus on the positives of it, because it can give you such beautiful friends and beautiful work experiences, in my opinion.
Perfect. Stay positive. I love it. Timothy, what say you?
I would say ask for feedback whenever you can. I think that there's a lot of people in the organizations where you're going to work at who can help you and who can coach you. And very often when it comes to maybe cultural differences or things you could do differently or say differently, people are very willing to teach you or very willing to point that out. But you're going to have to ask for it because, like Ivana said, someone needed to sit me down after that meeting and tell me this is not how we do things. And I think that people are very willing to work with you as long as you ask. And I've been very blessed that I've had mentors who did that for me along the way. But if one doesn't naturally present itself, then go and approach your managers or anyone else in the organization and say, hey, I'm here to learn, and I'm hoping that you can teach me. And I think a lot of people are willing to do that for you, but you're going to have to take that first step yourself.
All right, I'm loving it. Stay positive. Ask for feedback. Joost, what do you think?
To add on top of that, I think self-improvement and try to educate yourself as much as you can. Not just, you're going to get a nice jump start, obviously, in the first 4 years, but there's by no means any college or university is able to prepare you for the world if you're going to be truly multicultural. The lessons never stop coming. Try to reach out to whatever company or whatever kind of, if you're within a company or you're self-employed, try to kind of find these tools. And there's so much out there now on the internet, on courses, on trainings. Some of it really just freely available. Try to educate yourself, and by all means, I would say, wherever you're going, whether it's travel or just for holiday, it doesn't hurt just to kind of get, even I sometimes just do YouTube movies of what to do, what not to do. And it really helps you to kind of break that initial barrier of what you need to be aware of.
All right. Stay positive, ask for feedback, self-improvement. And Tim, fine.
I think they covered a lot of it.
Yeah, that's a good.
I think for me, it's about that. It's a journey, right? You're never going to end up and stop learning about different cultures. So for me, I still learn about what it is to live in Hong Kong for local every day. So don't think you know it all. There's always going to be something that you're gonna pick up. I would say take risks as well. Calculate a risk. You don't have to. If you think you're going to be homesick, don't go to Australia, right? You might go to Paris, or you might go to somewhere a little bit nearby, or more nearby. So, but it's really about keeping that open mind and making sure that you don't think you know it all when you keep on learning and improving your cultural awareness.
You nailed it. Lifelong learning. Ask for feedback, stay positive, and continue to educate yourself. Yeah? Kind of similar to lifelong learning. So, perfect. Take risks. I like that one too. Thank you all so much. It was so enlightening. Thanks for all the questions. And now I think there's prizes associated with this as well. It's Kahoot time, and I'm going to hand it over. It's like Kahoot time, and I'm going to hand it over to the like Kahoot master to handle.
guys are still there and still awake? Yeah, energy still there? Great. Educational part is done, thanks to everyone. But the thing is, this is not a Kahoot quiz, because Kahoot costs like 50 euros a year, and we are poor, so that's a different kind of quiz. But there are surprises associated with it. So the first thing we have to do now is divide you in your separate group, and we are now assigning one student per class to log in the quiz.
Yeah, because every class is playing together, so you're one team as a class, and I'm gonna choose the names from every class, and this person is gonna take out the phone and gonna play. You got it? Everyone got it? Yeah? Okay, so for HM1, it's gonna be Sophie. HM2, it's gonna be Vanessa. HM3, it's gonna be Olivier. HM4, Lisa. HM5, Julian. HM6, Tim. HM7, Ray. HM8, Lara. HM9, Jenna. HM10, Robin. FM1, it's going to be Kim. FM2, it's going to be Julia. FM3, it's going to be Ramon. And FM4, it's going to be Fabian.
So guys, you're allowed to work together, and there are prizes, don't forget it.
Yeah, if you're going to talk together as a team, do it quietly so the other teams are not going to hear it.
You can scan the QR code right now on the stage.
And you're going to log in with your class number. The class number is going to be your name. That's really important. Otherwise, you're not going to win.
HM1. You're still missing one group. Is anyone in?
Okay, last chance now.
Oh. Oh, that's so sad.
Okay, we're starting now. Okay, so the first question is going to be, which city in Europe has the most bridges?
Well, it's actually happened with more than 2,500 bridges, and the winner is what group?
Which group choose Hamburg? Oh, yeah.
Good job.
So the next question is true or false? Istanbul has a population of 18 million people.
What's happening to HMA? Users?
Okay, so question 3 is going to be, which is the most visited attraction in Europe?
So we're really glad that no one stayed in the Statue of Liberty.
Okay, next question. The Netherlands has the highest museum density in the world. In the whole world.
Guys, to be honest, I think we have more museums than good football players. Let's see.
Okay, so next question. Which track is Schroeder Breda?
Guys, be honest, how many of you are drunk already? How many want to get drunk? Great. called Black Day and I've been there many times.
Okay, what is the name of this dish?
Oh, not bad.
Okay, which class said just over the wall? Which class was it? Okay, which 3 countries have the best education system?
Oh, that was very nice. Obviously not the numbers. Just a joke.
Okay, where is the largest building in the European Union located? The largest building. There's one word missing.
The largest building is just a building. Oh, gosh. We have a new leader of the team.
Okay, last question. Lithuania has its own aroma called the scent of Lithuania.
Where's the second two? Congratulations, I think you won. Come on stage. Can some of you come on stage? Who wants to win something? Come on stage. Do you want to make a speech?
Yeah.
No. Speech.
And we're 2 for the win! Thank you.
So, thank you for your attention, guys. And now we want to introduce you to Yannick Thank you once again.
Now, where's Charlie? Is he gone? Charlie's gone. Okay. Well, you had your quiz time. And I think the winner should be very happy to win the prize. I joined my class, but hey, we didn't make it. Yeah, it was a pity. I want to wrap up this afternoon by thanking you all for your input, for your questions, for your attendance, for your enthusiasm. There's not a whole lot that I can tell you now, except for that you're all invited to discover this world some more. And an important next step in this is that you start filling out the Global Mind Monitor. You'll get an invite this week, fill it out, and start exploring where you stand with your global mind. And there will be a follow-up next semester. And there's some more in store on that. And I know it's end of the day, so I'm wrapping up by the final few words, and my colleagues in the front can join me in that. The bar is open!